Hello everyone, this is lunch and I got some requests for some deck profiles, so I'm just going to kind of go through. I'm going to go through the deck first, and then afterwards I'll talk about some of my decisions, some of my numbers. We are doing a Union Arena deck here first. We're doing Purple Code Geass. This is the deck I use most competitively at like my local events, and I've done pretty well with it. I think it's pretty good. I do run a couple different numbers than a lot of the decks do online, so I'm going to go through that first. Pretty standard 0 lineup. We got 4 Colin, 4 0, 4 C2. I'm missing some cards still, as you can tell, with the the alt arts. And I also play 1 Raksha. I really enjoy playing her as a one-of. I'll give more reasons later. It's just important so I can get back an extra mech if I need it later in the game. If I want to play a double mech or something like that, I play a few less mechs than a lot of other decks do, so that I can play some more low drop cards and allow the deck to be a little more aggressive. For 1-drops, all we have is 4 Collins. Obviously, you want to run as many Collins as possible, given the mech lineup that most Code Geass purple decks run. She's good because she's big early. She's also your color trigger, so you're always going to want to run 4 of her. For 2-drops, I have 4 Lelouch. This is a Lelouch that lowers something by 1000 BP. That's really important because it allows you to remove stuff. A lot of your removal only does 3k and lower. I also play 3 C2. It's just really nice to have the draw power. She comes down on 2. She can raid into some of the mechs. It's just really nice to have the draw power. One of the things I often change is playing 4 of this card, but right now I'm on 3. For 3-drops, we have 4 Collins and 2 Lelouches. So the reason I run this ratio is because you have a lot more Gawain raid targets between the C2 and the Lelouch than you do raid targets for Gurren. So I run the extra Colin so that I can get more Gurrens. I still want to run some of these though, because a lot of times the way you finish your opponent off is by either unblockable attacks or raid. And this helps a lot with the unblockable attacks. Sometimes you can get 2 or 3 unblockable attacks just in for damage to finish off your opponent. Also, it's important to have a good number of these because these are the only 2 energy cards in the deck, and you do need to get to 5 in this deck, so you need to have some 2 energies out in order to make the deck function. Especially if you're going to be raiding over the Colin, you really need to be able to replace that. For 4-drops, we have 4 Gawain and 2 Lelouch. 3 Gawain, 2 Lelouch. The reason I run 3 and not 4 is because 1, for deck space. 2, a lot of times just 1 is all you need. Triggering it out of life is like how it's most useful, getting that minus 1000 to your opponent's whole board. A lot of times 2, it's going to be an early play since you'll have extra C2s and Lelouches. I don't run 4 because I find that I'd rather just be playing Gurrens rather than Gawain in most spots. That's another reason we run the Raksha card, is because if we ever want to do a double Gawain play, which sometimes is really good if your opponent's board is really small, this helps you get back a Gawain and still make that double play. I also run 2 of the Lelouches. This is the one that's 2 action, 35k. When you play it, your opponent discards a card. When it dies, you draw 2. This is a really good early play. It really swings a lot of tempo in your favor. You'll notice I don't play the 4-drop Lelouch, this one, the one that kills something 30k or less. I just find that paying 2 action points for that effect is just too much. It is nice that he is a 2 energy card, but paying 2 actions in a deck that wants to be very tempo and very fast, it's not really worth the kill a card that still needs to be comboed with something else too. It's not like you can just play this and remove a 4k. You have to use either a Gawain beforehand, or you have to use a Lelouch. So I don't like playing that card. For our 5-drop lineup, we have 4 Gurren and 3 Gurren, and I'll go over which ones those are in a second because it's kind of confusing. They look very similar. So the Gurren I play 4 of is the one where after raid on attack, your opponent has to block it and it gets impact 1. The one I play 3 of is the one where on raid it gains, or it kills something 3k or less and has impact 1. So they both get impact. However, this one a lot of times is easier just to remove stuff from. Also, it's just a guaranteed damage all the time with a removal attached to it, which is really nice. You can kind of always play this card and it's never really bad. Whereas the kill card one, you need to combo with another card in order to remove a 4k. So that's why you play 3 of those and 4 of these. And once again, if we need the removal, we can always get it back with the Raksha. One way this deck plays that's different from a lot of other ones is it's not really interested in removing your opponent's stuff as much, only like really problematic cards. So we don't need as much hard removal. We actually don't even have access to that much hard removal. And in such, we just need to be pushing forward all the time. For action cards, we just play super simple. For United States of Japan, for Power of the Obedience. This is simply our final and special triggers. Nothing too notable to say about these. United States works, like all the other triggers where it untaps too. One thing to note about Power of Absolute Obedience, one, it's a really strong removal because it's essentially one action remove 5k or less, which not all decks have super easy access to because you'll always have Lelouch on field. Another thing to note is this C2 draws 2 cards if you play it after an Absolute Obedience, so a lot of times later in the game, that can be a really strong play to help refresh your hand. Here's the full deck laid out. Once again, the big changes I have that a lot of other purple code Geasses don't do. One, a lot of them play this Lelouch, the removal one that I don't like, as well as playing the one Raksha is pretty uncommon as well. A lot of them also play 4 Gawains. I really like 3. When you're playing this deck, you need to be very tempo forward. You want to be pushing zeros up early. That's why I play so many. And you really want to be taking the fight to your opponent. If you're playing the long game, you're going to have a really hard time winning the game because a lot of the other decks have much better endgame win conditions. Things like blue JJK, as well as green Hunter x Hunter, which are kind of the other big meta decks right now. They just have way better win conditions than you, so you really want to be pushing forward and you want to be finishing with your unblockables and your impacts. A lot of times, unlike other decks, you're not really going to run your opponent out of cards so much as you are going to run them out of life. You really need to be pushing forward, taking whatever damage you can at all times. It's not like a hyper aggro deck per se, not like red Code Geass or something like that. It's more of a tempo, so you kind of control the board as you move forward and win the game. So yeah, let me know below, are there any changes you would make? Is there anything that you play differently in your version of this deck? Otherwise, everyone, have a nice afternoon.